Think about this for a second. A football club that fell so far it ended up in the third tier of English football. Think about it. If someone makes a whole documentary about the pain of supporting a club, just how bad must things have gotten? For 8 long years, one of the biggest stadiums in the country sat in a division it was never built for. And the one match that defines this corner of England, the fixture that stops an entire region, simply vanished from the top flight. No bragging rights, no bad blood under the lights, just silence. Then, in a single season, everything changed. This club didn't just climb back to the Premier League. It came face to face with its oldest rival, twice. So what happened next? That's exactly the part nobody saw coming. To understand just how far Sunderland fell, you have to go back to 2017. After a decade in the Premier League, the club was relegated to the Championship. But it didn't stop there. There was more to come. 1 year later, they dropped again, all the way to League One, the third tier of English football. Think about it. You've got a 49,000-seat stadium, a famously loyal fan base, and yet your team is in the third division. That's not an easy thing to accept. It was such a familiar kind of heartbreak that it eventually got its own Netflix series, Sunderland Till I Die. They climbed back to the Championship in 2022, but the Premier League still felt a world away. 8 long years. That's how long this wait would stretch. By 2025, Sunderland were back in the Championship and chasing the dream once more. Under manager Régis Lebris, they reached the playoff final at Wembley. One match, 90 minutes, for a place in the Premier League. They don't call it the richest game in football for nothing. The winner lands a ticket worth hundreds of millions. But the start of the match was anything but comfortable for Sunderland. Sheffield United struck first and led for most of the game. Time was running out. Then, with 14 minutes left, Eliezer Mayenda equalized and brought the dream back to life. And deep into stoppage time, a young player named Tom Watson appeared out of nowhere and fired the winner into the net. The 8-year wait was over. Sunderland were finally returning to where they belonged. So why does this one match mean so much? Newcastle and Sunderland are just 16 kilometers apart, so close that they share the same region, yet separated by a rivalry just as deep. The two clubs first met back in 1888, and they've faced each other more than 150 times since. After all these years, the scales sit almost perfectly in the middle. Sunderland just ahead on total wins, with Newcastle right on their heels. This isn't about trophies or titles. It's about pride, about who the Northeast truly belongs to. Around here, people pass this rivalry down from one generation to the next. So when Sunderland slid down the leagues, the top-flight derby simply disappeared, and a whole region was left waiting for its biggest day to return. Now, almost nobody expected much from Sunderland that season. Most people had already written them off for the relegation zone. There was a real sense that for them, just being there was an achievement. But the club had other ideas. They were bold in the transfer market, and bringing in experienced midfielder Granit Xhaka genuinely caught the whole league off guard. As the weeks went by, this team everyone had marked down for the bottom started collecting results nobody saw coming. And there was something else hanging over the derby. Hard as it is to believe, Newcastle's last league win over Sunderland went all the way back to 2010. A striking record for a rivalry this evenly matched. So as the first meeting approached, the question wasn't only who would win, but whether Newcastle could finally end that frustration on their own patch. Finally, the day arrived, and there it was. On the 14th of December 2025, the derby returned to the top flight after roughly a decade away, hosted at Sunderland's Stadium of Light. After everything they'd been through, It's not hard to imagine what that moment meant to the home fans. The first half was tight and physical, with very few clear chances. But right at the start of the second half, the moment came. A cross came into the Newcastle box, and defender Nick Woltemade barely got a touch on it as he tried to clear, only to turn it into his own net. 1-0 Sunderland. The Stadium of Light went wild. The derby was back in the top flight, and on that first meeting, the bragging rights belonged to the home side. 3 months later, on the 22nd of March 2026, came the return fixture, this time at Newcastle's St. James's Park. This time, Newcastle had only one thing on their minds: revenge. They started fast, and in the 10th minute, Anthony Gordon put Newcastle in front. For a long stretch of the match, it looked like Newcastle would finally get the win they were after, but Sunderland refused to fold. Then Chemsdean Talby leveled the score, and from that moment the whole spirit of the match shifted in a completely different direction. And in the 90th minute, with almost everything over, Brian Brobby stepped up and fired home the winner. 2-1 Sunderland, right in the heart of Newcastle. They had done the double in their first season back, something that doesn't happen every day in this fixture. But here's the part that turns a good story into a remarkable one. These two wins took Sunderland's unbeaten run in league derbies to 11 games, a streak neither side had ever managed before in this fixture. A team everyone assumed would be stuck in a relegation fight finished the season 7th with 54 points and booked a place in the Europa League. To put that in perspective, only a handful of promoted clubs in Premier League history have ever done better. What's more, they left their neighbors behind them in the table. Backed by smart signings like Granit Xhaka, this was no lucky escape. It was one of the finest seasons a promoted side has ever produced. Sunderland didn't just come back, they showed everyone they had arrived. So when you step back and look at the whole picture, this is more than just a promotion story. A club that once dropped to the 3rd tier, that had a documentary made about its heartbreak, rose from the ashes, beat its old rival twice, and found itself in Europe at the end of the road. For the people of the Northeast, the derby is home again, and the wait was worth it. So where do you stand? Has this story already hit its peak, or is the truly big chapter still unwritten? Let me know down below. I read every single one.